The funeral hall was drowning in silence when the black hand, Belgian Malinois named Shadow, suddenly lifted his head and released a low, trembling growl. People shifted in their seats. They thought it was grief. They thought the loyal canine simply couldn't understand why his handler, Officer Marcus Hale, lay motionless inside the casket. But Shadow's growl deepened, sharp enough to slice through the quiet and send a ripple of unease through the room. I share new stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Shadow's ears pricked forward. His muscles tightened under his vest. His gaze locked onto the casket, not with sadness, but with unmistakable alertness. Something was wrong. Officer Tanner Rhodes, Marcus's closest friend, noticed first. He leaned forward in the front pew as Shadow suddenly lunged, claws scraping against the polished floor. Gasps broke across the hall. "Shadow, heel," one officer whispered urgently. But Shadow didn't listen. He pressed his paws against the dark wood of the coffin, nose digging into its edges, barking in sharp, urgent bursts, warnings, commands, please, all rolled into one frantic sound. Marcus's widow, Elena Hale, looked up with trembling hands. She had known Shadow for years. She had seen him angry, playful, stubborn, but never like this. His bark wasn't grief. It was purpose. Tanner approached slowly. "Easy, Shadow. Talk to me. What's wrong, boy?" Shadow's bark shifted into a desperate whine. He circled the casket, sniffing violently, tail rigid and eyes wide, as if he were sensing something. A live something, hiding something, fighting its way out. And then Tanner heard it. A faint sound, so faint he thought it was his imagination. A tiny cry. His blood turned cold. "Stop," he barked. "Everyone be quiet." The entire room froze. There it was again, barely audible, weak, muffled, a whimper. Tanner's face drained of all color. "Elena, I think there's something inside the casket." The funeral director hesitated. "Sir, protocol. Open it now." Shadow barked furiously, confirming Tanner's fear. Hands trembling. The director lifted the lid. A wave of confusion swept through the room. People leaned forward, expecting nothing but the stillness of a fallen hero. But instead, nestled beneath Marcus's folded hands, wrapped in a corner of his jacket, was a newborn puppy, barely a few days old, trembling and gasping for warmth. Shadow immediately stopped barking. He lowered his head and sniffed the tiny creature, whining softly. His tail wagged once slow, protective. Elena covered her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. How is that possible?" Tanner carefully lifted the fragile pup. As he did, something slid from Marcus's uniform, a folded note addressed in Marcus's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, protect them." Them? The room erupted in whispers. Shadow nuzzled the puppy again, letting out a soft rumble that carried heartbreak, relief, and fierce devotion. He knew, he had known all along. Marcus hadn't left this world alone. He had left a fragile life behind, one Shadow had sworn to guard. Tanner unfolded the note with trembling fingers as the mourners leaned in. Breath held, waiting for the truth that would turn the entire funeral upside down. Shadow sat beside the newborn puppy, his body curled protectively around the tiny creature as if shielding it from the world. No one dared move closer. The revelation had struck the funeral hall like a lightning bolt. Marcus Hale had hidden a newborn inside his uniform, and Shadow, loyal beyond death, had refused to let anyone bury the truth. I share new stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Tanner Rhodes held the note in shaking hands. The room went silent as he read aloud. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. And if Shadow led you to her, then thank him. He never left me, not even when he should have." Elena gasped softly at the word her. "The puppy was a female," Tanner continued, voice cracking. "I found her the night I went missing. She was abandoned in the cold, just hours old. I didn't have the heart to leave her. Shadow insisted we stay with her. He refused to leave her side." Shadow whined at the sound of Marcus's name, nudging the baby pup gently with his nose. The note went on. "I kept her warm as long as I could. If help didn't come for me, I prayed it would come for her. Shadow would know what to do. He always knows." Elena sank to her knees beside Shadow, tears hitting the floor. "He died trying to save her," she whispered. Tanner wiped his eyes. He didn't want her to die alone in the cold. He used his last moments to protect her. Heavy silence filled the hall until the paramedic who attended the funeral stepped forward. "We need to get the pup into warmth now. She's cold, dehydrated, but she's still fighting." Elena nodded, her hand trembling as she reached out. Shadow immediately stepped in front of her, not aggressively but carefully blocking her until Tanner spoke gently. "It's okay, Shadow. She's safe. She's safe." Shadow looked at him for a long moment, then slowly moved aside. Elena wrapped the tiny pup in her shawl, her tears falling onto the soft fabric. "She needs a name," someone whispered. Elena looked down at the fragile bundle, then at Shadow, who sat beside her with the stillness of a guardian. "She'll be called Hope," Elena said quietly, voice full of emotion. "Because Marcus died giving her a chance to live." Whispers of agreement echoed softly in the room as Hope let out a tiny cry. Shadow pressed closer, licking her gently. The sight brought fresh waves of tears across the chapel, even in death. Marcus had left behind a miracle land, a responsibility for everyone who loved him. But the letter wasn't finished. Tanner continued reading. "If Hope survives, please make sure she stays with Shadow. They belong together. He watched over her when I couldn't. Don't separate them." Elena covered her mouth, staring at the note in disbelief. He wanted Shadow to raise her. Shadow's ears perked up, as if he understood those very words. The final lines froze Tanner's voice. "And if the truth ever comes out, they'll know what happened to me. Hope didn't appear by accident. Someone left her there. Someone who knew I would try to save her." A collective shiver spread across the room. Someone left the newborn puppy to die. On purpose, Tanner looked up, face pale. "Elena, Marcus didn't just find her. He was targeted." Shadow growled low, the fur on his back rising. The funeral was no longer just mourning a hero. It had become the beginning of a mystery, and Shadow, alongside Hope, was determined to finish what Marcus started. Shadow wouldn't leave Hope's side, even as the officers moved around the small precinct infirmary. Even as Elena rocked back and forth in a chair, whispering prayers under her breath. Even as Tanner tried to make sense of Marcus's final letter, Shadow stayed glued to the newborn puppy, watching her tiny chest rise and fall with each fragile breath. Hours passed, and the storm outside grew heavier, rain billowing against the windows in sheets. Tanner paced the room, the letter open in his hand. "There's more here." Marcus hinted someone left Hope deliberately. Someone who wanted him to find her. Elena swallowed hard. But why leave a newborn puppy to die? Unless Shadow suddenly stood, not angled toward the puppy, not toward Tanner, but toward the door. A deep growl rolled out of his chest. Tanner froze. "Shadow, what is it?" The dog took a step forward, nose high, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the cold air drifting under the doorframe. Then he barked once, sharp, commanding. There was someone outside, Tanner signaled to officers. They moved into position and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, except for a single object lying on the floor. A torn piece of fabric. Elena covered Hope protectively. What does that mean? Tanner crouched and lifted the cloth. It was rough, old, soaked by the storm. Nothing special. But Shadow lunged forward, sniffing it. Then let out a sound Elena had only heard once before. The same desperate warning cry he gave at Marcus's coffin. He knows this scent, Tanner said. This was near Marcus when he died. Elena shivered. Someone came to the funeral, and they were here, watching. Shadow barked again, louder this time, pulling on the leash the moment Tanner grabbed it. He wants to track them, one officer said. Tanner nodded. Then we follow him. Elena stood up, clutching Hope. You can't take Shadow out there alone. If someone hurt Marcus, they'll hurt him too. Shadow turned to her ears, pressing forward, eyes determined. He wasn't afraid. He was ready. Tanner put a hand on her shoulder. We're going with him, and we're ending this. The moment they stepped outside, Shadow pulled with stunning force, nose low to the wet ground, following a trail invisible to human eyes. Rain hammered their jackets as they ran behind him through the streets Marcus once patrolled. He stopped at an alley, a cold, narrow, forgotten place. Shadow growled at the darkness. Tanner raised his flashlight. Marcus was found near here, wasn't he? One officer nodded slowly. Collapsed right at the end of this alley. Hypothermia, exhaustion, but no one ever figured out why he wandered here. Shadow dug his paws into the mud, barking wildly, scraping at the concrete wall as if trying to break it open. Then they saw it, etched into the wall. Half covered by grime was a bloody smear dried. Old Dada handprint, Elena gasped. That's Marcus's size. Tanner's voice trembled. He reached for this wall before he fell. Shadow whined low, pressing his head against the mark, mourning and remembering at once. Then he turned suddenly, ears up, tail straight. Muscles tensed. A shadow moved at the end of the alley. Someone was watching. The silhouette froze, then ran. Go! Tanner yelled. Shadow tore forward, chasing the figure into the storm. Hope's future and Marcus's truth hanging on every stride of his powerful legs. The hunt had begun. Asterisk. Shadow lunged through the rain-soaked alleyway, his paws hammering the ground with unstoppable force. Water splashed beneath him as he closed the distance between himself and the fleeing shadow ahead. Tanner and the other officers sprinted behind, their shouts drowned by thunder that cracked across the sky. The figure slipped around a corner, but Shadow never hesitated. His instincts were locked onto one thing, that scent. The same scent that clung to Marcus's uniform the night he died. The same scent Shadow had been growling at since the funeral. The same scent that drifted ominously beneath the infirmary door only hours earlier. Shadow knew. This trail knew this trail, and he was done letting it escape. They burst into an abandoned construction yard. Rusted beams loomed like skeleton arms reaching toward the storm-filled sky. Broken crates littered the ground. Rain pooled into dark puddles, reflecting flashes of lightning. The figure stumbled, slipped, and crashed into a pile of wood. Stop! Tanner shouted. The figure crawled backward, hood falling off, revealing a thin, pale man, eyes darting wildly, face streaked with rain and fear. Shadow stood rigid, snarling. Tanner stepped forward, gun drawn. Hands up, now. The man raised trembling hands. Don't shoot. Elena arrived seconds later, clutching Hope under her raincoat. Shadow positioned himself between her and the man instantly. Tanner's eyes narrowed. Who are you? What did you do to Marcus? The man swallowed hard. His voice was a shaky whisper. I didn't mean for him to die. Shadow's snarl cut through the storm. Talk. Tanner demanded. I left the puppy there, the man confessed, pointing toward the darkness. I found her in the woods, cold, alone. I was going to take her to the shelter, I swear, but then I saw Officer Hale. I panicked. I didn't want to get caught trespassing on the wildlife reserve. He squeezed his eyes shut. I left the puppy near him. I knew he wouldn't ignore her. Elena's jaw trembled. You abandoned a newborn animal. In the freezing cold, because you didn't want a fine. The man didn't answer. Tanner stepped closer. That doesn't explain why Marcus ended up in this alley. Lightning flashed, the man's face twisted in guilt. He chased after me. I heard him calling out, trying to return the puppy. But I was scared, I ran. He pointed to the alley behind them. He followed me until he collapsed. I didn't know he wouldn't get back up. Shadow let out a heartbreaking sound, half growl, half whine. The man dropped his head. I didn't kill him on purpose. I just ran. Tanner cuffed him with a trembling hand. You left a man to die. Another crack of thunder echoed through the yard as officers led the man away. Elena knelt beside Shadow. He didn't die for nothing, she whispered. He saved her. He saved Hope. Hope whimpered softly in her arms, opening her tiny eyes for the first time, blinking up at Elena, then at Shadow. Shadow licked the puppy gently. Whining with relief, Tanner stepped closer, watching the bond forming before him. Marcus was right, he said softly. Shadow and Hope belonged together. Weeks passed. Marcus received full honors. The truth came out. And Hope grew stronger each day. But one thing never changed. Shadow guarded her like she was the last piece of Marcus left in the world. He slept beside her crate, followed her tiny steps, nudged her gently when she cried, and stood protectively whenever strangers approached. Hope wasn't just a puppy. She was Marcus's final mission, and Shadow, once a loyal canine officer, became her father, her guardian, and her promise that no life Marcus tried to protect would ever be forgotten. I share new stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video.